While we were away, brought to you by Dementia. Joe Biden sat down with one of his super fans, CNN's Jake Tapper, for a one-on-one interview.
We passed so much legislation that significantly makes a point about, for example, the American Rescue Plan, the legislation to deal with inflation, the Inflation Act.
When people hear the word Armageddon, they get scared. Used by a U.S. president, they get scared. Do you think in any way discussing this type of thing publicly, openly, Putin's possible use of nuclear weapons, might have the opposite effect of what you want? It might make some of our wobblier European allies be even more scared of confronting Putin.
Well, no, I don't think so at all. I think, look, it was a directed, when I'm talking about, I'm talking to Putin. It hadn't, there's no guarantee that they're going to be, I don't think there will be a recession. If it is, it'll be a very slight recession. I'm sure that we're in a situation where we finally have action on guns. And by the way, I'm going to get an assault weapons ban. Before this is over, I'm going to get that again. Not a joke. And watch.
Moving on, another member of the European Union Parliament is calling out the COVID jabs. Croatian politician Mislav Kolakusic says the purchase of 4.5 billion doses of the COVID jab for Europe's mere 450 million EU residents is, quote, the biggest corruption scandal in the history of mankind. In a video posted on Twitter, Kolakusic says there was no data on the efficacy of the jabs at the time the EU purchased its 4.5 billion doses, nor any info on its harmful effects. The other member of parliament we told you about yesterday, Rob Roos, who cornered a Pfizer executive on whether there was any data about the jabs stopping transmissibility, joined Tucker Carlson to talk about the undoing of the COVID jabs.
They tricked perfectly healthy young people into taking this jab using false arguments. And they used big words such as antisocial to sow an immense hatred against people who refuse to comply with the government's wishes. And even worse, many governments, including mine, actually introduced so-called COVID passports. These passports made access to parts of society conditional. Those who did not wish to get vaccinated lost that access, not being able to visit a restaurant or a gym, all in the name of public health. Our governments love to talk about institutional discrimination, but this was real institutional discrimination.
Meanwhile, Dr. Paul Offit, a member of the FDA Advisory Board on Vaccines, explains why, despite being pro-jab, he hates the new boosters and voted against recommending them.
We really need much better data, I think, before we move forward on this, and I can only hope that it's coming because I feel very strongly about my no vote there. In fact, the only reason I voted no was because hell no was not a choice. And it just surprised me that we were willing to go forward with this with such scant evidence of benefit. I think that the phrase that I used was uncomfortably scant. So you just sort of felt like the fix was in a little bit here. Maybe that's not the right phrase, but it was something that they wanted. And I felt like we were being led.
It's been revealed as part of the Durham probe into the origins of the Trump-Russia collusion hoax that the FBI offered Steele dossier author Christopher Steele $1 million if he himself could prove the claims he made in the dossier were true. But Steele obviously could not. Totally normal stuff in a liberal democracy. The newest Trafalgar poll of Georgia shows Brian Kemp leading Stacey Abrams by 9 points in the gubernatorial race, but has Raphael Warnock beating Herschel Walker by 1 point outright in the Senate race. Colt update. The following oath was sworn by scores of University of Minnesota medical students recently. Whoops, wrong clip.
Our institution is located on Dakota land. Today, many indigenous people throughout the state, including Dakota and Ojibwe, call the Twin Cities home. We also recognize this acknowledgement is not enough. We commit to uprooting the legacy and perpetuation of structural violence deeply embedded within the healthcare system. We recognize inequities built by past and present traumas rooted in white supremacy, colonialism, the gender binary, ableism, and all forms of oppression. As we enter this profession with opportunity for growth, We commit to promoting a culture of anti-racism, listening and amplifying voices for positive change.
You ever wonder what happens when woke gender ideology meets Islam? This. What you're watching are hundreds of Muslim parents at a school in Michigan shutting down a school board meeting. The parents were upset about gender ideology being taught in schools to their children. Checking in on the military, this is Army Secretary Christine Warmuth talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion in the armed forces.
More broadly, in terms of, soldiers coming from marginalized communities or, demographics that are not widely represented in the Army, that's part of why we've got to emphasize positive command climates and inclusion. We get criticized, frankly, sometimes for being woke. I'm not sure what woke means. I think woke means a lot of different things to different people. But first of all, I would say if woke means, we are not focused on warfighting, we are not focused on readiness, that doesn't reflect what I see.
And that's what happened while we were away.